People who saw someone get fired on day one of a new job. What did that person do to get fired? Story 1. Boss hired a new woman for help around the office. Her first day she showed up on time and jumped right into helping out. Seemed like a good hire at first. Then the police showed up and arrested her for putting her 2-year-old in a home-built cage at home that morning and left the kid alone because she didn't want to pay for daycare. Edit. Wow, this really blew up. About the daycare thing. Apparently that incident wasn't the first time she had done it. I'm sure she couldn't afford daycare, but don't lock your kid up in a cage and leave. Not related to my previous post, but similar, and this happened not too far from where my post took place. Story 2. Dude interviewed well. Showed up on his first Monday at the office. Drunk as, slurring, stumbling, trying to use the coffee machine and just spewing coffee all over the floor. Security walked him out within the first hour. Story 3. Guy came back from lunch high out of his mind, and then we found his Instagram video shouting out the company and tagging us while he was smoking out of 3 different devices in his car at the gas station a block away within minutes because it popped up in our social media manager's feed. Story 4. Refused to wear proper PPE. The supervisor told him to put it on. He flat out said no, so they fired him. Didn't even make it to first coffee break. If a guy is that adamant about safety gear on his first day, it isn't a good sign. Story 5. We were in a rut and desperately needed people. So my boss told me to lower my standards commercial driving job and I had disqualified like 4 candidates. All warranted IMO. I said fine, he'll try, and he sends me a student from our driving school. First 3 days are classroom. Last 2 days are for driving. This man shows up late. No uniform. We bought him one. I ask him where his uniform is. Left it at home. I say okay, you can have someone bring it on lunch. Let me see your driver's license. He says he also left that at home. I say how do you show up to be a driver on your first day late, without your uniform and license? He says sorry, he overslept. I fired him on the spot. He cussed me out and walked away. My boss started to scold me until I told him what happened. He stopped all. Story 6. Was an unpaid intern at my mom's campsite for the summer just to get something to do. Mom hires a new guy for a trial period, and as I know practically how everything works, I'm told to shadow him for a few days. Keep in mind this is a small campsite, and a family business first and foremost. Conversation starts up, and immediately, new guy zeroes in on a worker just doing his job and starts trash-talking him like crazy. While the worker was only doing his job of trimming the hedges, emptying the trash, that sort of stuff. They hadn't even been introduced yet. End of the day I report to my mom, new guy in tow. Snitch that I am, I tell every unsavory detail that spewed from the little rat's mouth. The worker he trash-talked all day long for no reason, my dad, mom's husband. Mom told him his trial period was over, and to get out of her property and never show his face here again. Story 7. Dude I started with during an overnight locked-in stocking position at Toys R Us went absolutely mental. He worked about 1/4 of the shift, then started talking complete madness, then disappeared entirely. As in, we couldn't find him anywhere. We'd see evidence he was still in the store, but didn't see or hear him at all. After a couple hours of this, he would suddenly leap into whatever aisle we were in and just start shrieking, or laughing manically, or literally throwing merchandise at us. Bizarrely, he tried to show up the next day, as if he were unaware of what went down. The lead guy said that happened a lot. Dudes just couldn't handle being locked in a silent, empty store all night. Do you think we were hiring 3 guys at once for a 6-man crew? Story 8. New guy was hired as a courier driver, came in for his first day, and was handed some paperwork to deliver to the nearest city about 20 minutes away. He says I don't drive in the city. That was literally the job, so he was quickly dismissed. Story 9. Not day 1, day 5. I hired a woman who interviewed very well. Her job was admin, taking calls and scheduling appointments, creating a schedule for 17 salespeople, not very intense. She was in training. 2 different people would be training her, alternating days. Day 1, all was fine. Day 2, just the normal feedback on how fast she was picking things up. Day 3, feedback was that the trainer thinks the new person was fondling herself at her desk. She questioned what she saw, but wanted it noted. Day 4, feedback from the other trainer mimicked what the first had seen, but was adamant it happened. And the new person was wearing a skirt every day, and touching the desk and the phones and the logbook and the pens and the doorknobs. Day 5, lunchtime, new person went to lunch. Both trainers got someone else to answer the phones while they came to me to report that indeed, the new girl was pleasuring herself at her desk, on company time, and WTF is up with that, and why can't she do this at home? And they looked it up, and it can be an obsession for some people and they do not want to work with her anymore. So when the new person returned from lunch, I caught her as she got back into the building, and said, "Can you please come into my office? I need to discuss something with you." HR was already in my office. New woman said, "I know what this is about, I'll just quit." She left. We mailed her check to her, sanitized the office, got a new chair for that desk, and never heard from her again. Story 10. I started on the same day as another woman. At one point I started cracking a few bad dad jokes to break the ice a bit. She then said, "Oh, I've got one," and then proceeding to reel off some of the most racist jokes I've ever heard. She went to lunch and never came back. Story 11. He lasted one day, went for drinks with the team and boss, commented about the boss' 16-year-old daughter, then just would not stop. Is she single was the last straw. He did not make it to day 2. This guy was 30 and in an 80K network admin job, decent money in 2014. Story 12. Showed up in pajamas and when walked to the circulation desk, wrinkled her nose and said she thought she wouldn't have to actually talk to people. The position was title circulation and customer service. Story 13 guy was hired contingent on background credit check. On day 3 I got a call from HR saying he wasn't eligible. The store manager who hired him made me fire him, took him in the office and said your checks came back negative and you can't work here. He started going on about his record had been sealed and the forgery and theft convictions were supposed to be expunged. And then I said no man, you got bad credit. Fast forward 3 months. The company dropped the credit check requirement, so the store manager hired him again. 3 weeks later they caught him stealing computers. Story 14 young lad started in a junior marketing role in the office as part of my team. He was sat at a desk directly in front of the IT department who had a clear view of his monitor. Within 30 minutes of his induction one of the IT guys calls me over and says look at this. New lad had opened File Explorer and was trying to root around the contents of shared drives and servers on the company network. We pulled him to one side and asked him what he thought he was doing, warned him that trying to pry around the systems on your first day was probably not the ideal start. He apologized and promised not to do it again. After he left the room, IT guy and I went back to IT guy's desk and, in front of our very eyes this lad immediately opened the registry and started trying to access security settings. 2 minutes between first warning and firing. It is seldom a good idea to engage with the actually reply guys, but I'm going to clear up a few things in the hope they might stop replying. I was not the IT guy. The IT guy was the IT guy. Right, I don't know about security systems access rights. Did the new lad actually access anything as opposed to simply try to, if I know, see above? Yes, it probably was a terrible system setup. This was over 20 years ago. It was the worst environment I ever worked in. Nothing was done properly. Nothing worked. I didn't stay long. Maybe the IT guy should have been fired for this too. It might well have been a failing on his part. I don't know, I was not the IT etc. Should the new lad have been fired at all? You'd need to ask the HR manager that fired him based on what the IT guy reported. I was there in my capacity as the new lad's supervisor to witness the firing. Nothing, and I mean absolutely nothing. He was just sitting there doing absolutely nothing for like 4 hours. While everyone else was working their off. Story 15 trained a guy at a large liquor store. I was a department manager. Nice guy, worked hard, seemed engaged. Sent him home a little early since he was training. Tried to sneak out a handle of vodka on his way out the door. Got stopped by security. My only reaction was really dude. Story 16 technically it was the second day. I work in a steel foundry and my boss hired a guy last year. First day is orientation and I let this guy and another that was in orientation to leave early to go to Red Wing and pick up some required and company paid for boots. The guy shows up the next day wearing sneakers. Says he fell asleep and didn't make it to Red Wing. My boss tells him he can't be out in the plant in sneakers. This is 7 a.m. so my boss tells him to go home and when Red Wing opens at 8:30 get some boots and come back. About noon he isn't back yet and isn't answering his phone. Boss calls Red Wing and they say he hasn't been there. Boss tells them not give him boots if he shows up. An hour later he calls my boss saying Red Wing wouldn't give him any boots. When my boss asked him why he didn't go at 8:30 like he was told, he gave the same I fell asleep excuse. He was crying about how nobody will give him a chance when my boss told him he wasn't wasting any more time with him. You were given a chance and blew it because you couldn't be bothered to pick up free work boots. Story 17 I was a foreman on a residential framing crew. New guy shows up 15 minutes late, stands at his car and has a snack and a drink. Then he starts slow walking really slow, over to the home we were building. When he finally gets there, I tell him just get back in your car, we can't use you. No way, and we are going to carry any worthless slack on our crew. We had pride in our work. He didn't even make a second on the payroll. Story 18 an exec at my company showed up on his first day not counting orientation high on opiates and had a concealed handgun that he didn't do a very good job of concealing. Didn't even make it past 11 o'clock a.m. Story 19 a while ago now 20 years-ish the person who showed up for work was absolutely not the person who was interviewed. Heard a couple different stories for what had happened. Either they sent someone else to interview for them or someone stood in their place because they went AWOL, but both to me are far-fetched. Never got to the bottom of it and wasn't high enough in the company to learn what happened. But it was definitely weird. Story 20 I was a warehouse supervisor. Owner brought in a new forklift driver on Monday. I asked if he was certified and was told don't worry about it. We start loading deliveries and L put my best spotter and inventory guy with a new hire. First load he clips a post. I give him a verbal warning standard and take his spotter aside. Spotter tells me the driver is ignoring instructions. I take driver aside and tell him he will listen to his spotter or L will put him on a dolly. Less than an hour later, I'm standing by the office door, talking to my scheduler, and L hear no stop NOO and a crunch, guy backed into a wall. I walked over and told him to get off the forklift, handed him a dolly, and put him with a stocking team. I go into my office to do a damage report and a formal write-up. I hear yelling and a huge bang. Back out onto the dock I go and there's the new guy arguing with 4 people and one of my forklifts on its side in the parking lot. The guy had gotten back on a forklift as soon as my back was turned and had driven it off the dock. Fortunately at a spot where the dock was only a foot or so off the ground I took him to my office and told him to sit his down, called the owner and told him I was firing his new hire with DNR. Owner stated to argue with me until L told him what the damages were going to cost him. New guy was escorted off the property by 2 of my semi-pro football players that worked for me. Never did find out who that clown was related to. there's no way he was certified or qualified for that job. Story 21 New hires first day as an usher at a movie theater. I was training them and he just vanished. Showed again a few hours later. Turns out he went and watched a whole movie, from beginning to end. We were slow and you said there wasn't much more to train on, and you said we can watch stuff on shift was the excuse. He severely misunderstood my when it's slow, you have some free time comments, like man, there's more to cover and we don't just watch a whole movie. If there isn't much to do and the right folks are on shift, you can watch a few minutes here and there. As an usher, it's assumed if you're not seen, you're off doing your job somewhere and we're on radio if needed. Story 22 New security guard fell asleep in various locations around the school throughout his first day. He was fired around 3 p.m. when the principal found him asleep in the front lobby. A few people have mentioned that maybe he has narcolepsy. Just to correct a misconception the public has about narcolepsy, it is not an excuse to fall asleep all day and then scream discrimination when you get fired. I have narcolepsy. I also get treatment for my narcolepsy and am able to work a full-time job without falling asleep all day. I have also made my disability known to my employer and completed all necessary paperwork to get reasonable accommodations through ADA. So yes, maybe he has narcolepsy, in which case, he needs to go see a doctor. Story 23 Working in a sheet metal shop in the 90s. Standing at one of the workbenches going over some blueprints with the owner of the shop while new guy was standing there. New guy had been on the clock for only about 2 hours. A lady comes out of the office and mentions something to the owner and then goes back into the office. New guy says, "Holy, did you see the on her?" Owner says, "Yeah, that's my wife. Here, let's go get your things." Never saw new guy again. Story 24 He made it through the workday fine. Then we had a little welcome party for him after work where he proceeded to get completely wasted. Walked up to our CEO and started yelling incoherently at him while poking him in the chest with his finger. CEO gently pushed him back asking him to hit out of his personal space, but drunk guy staggers backwards until he hit a wall and passed out. He was terminated before he woke up. Story 25 He was training in a warehouse, and was near a bunch of bubble wrap. He popped a bunch of shapes into the bubble wrap. When the supervisor came back it was a really disappointing conversation and he was walked out. Story 26 Worked at a takeout counter, was training the new guy, constantly spilled food on his hands and fingers when filling up containers, decided the best way to clean it off was with his mouth and tongue, in front of customers. Story 27 I was a sandwich artist at a Subway back when we were called sandwich artists. The store I had been working at closed and I took whatever job I could find. I did the math down to the hour and knew exactly how many hours I would need to work to make rent plus have 250 for food and maybe a beer. It was on this last day that it happened. My shift was a closing one. I was scheduled until 10:45 p.m. My plan was to walk out and quit at 7. I did not feel bad, for the owner was a very condescending and overall bad person. She had hired this new guy named Eddie. Eddie was supposed to show up after the lunch shift for his first day of training. Eddie though was late. The owner called him up and he answered. She asked him where he was, and he said home. She told him he was supposed to be at the Subway. He said he forgot that was today, but he'd be right in, as he lives just a few blocks away. 15 minutes later Eddie walks in. He's got long hair worn long, dirty hippie clothes, and flip-flops. But that's not what you noticed about Eddie. What you noticed was his eyes weren't just bloodshot, they appeared to be blood, and the reek of weed was so strong on him one would smell it when he opened the door before he stepped a foot in. The owner told him to go home, take a shower, and come back with real shoes on. Eddie left. He came back a half hour later with shoes on, yet somehow smelled even more strongly of weed. It was overpowering, it was, above all, unappetizing. The owner sent him home and told him not to come back. He asked if he was getting paid for the day, and that just made her angry. After that I felt bad and couldn't bring myself to walk out on that shift. Leaving her alone in the store, I finished my shift, told her I was quit, and never went to that Subway ever again, nor, not surprisingly, did I ever see Eddie again, though it's entirely possible that at times I had smelt him. Story 28 He kind of fired himself. Hired as the president of a live entertainment company. The owner threw a big welcome meeting in the enormous lobby. Breakfast served and the whole 9 yards. Literally $1 million salary easy. Dude never showed. Was a running joke for years. Story 29 I worked in a hotel where some positions wore an issued uniform and some positions wore their own clothes. The dress code was very strict dressy business attire. Everyone had to wear a blazer. Men had to wear button-down shirts with a tie, but the hotel provided free dry cleaning for all of it. One day I was walking down the hall to the room where you pick up drop-off dry cleaning and can hear a man yelling. Get near the door, and a new hire, who was in a position where you wore your own clothes, was demanding that the attendant issue him a uniform full suit, dress shirt and tie because he wasn't going to ruin his nice clothes. Of course the attendant cannot issue anything without the paperwork from HR, and the new hire would have been told that he will be wearing his own clothes. Walk into the room, see the attendant in tears and this dickhead aggressively leaning over the desk yelling at her. I was shocked and basically asked what is going on. This guy sees another white person, immediately dials it back and gets all chummy and schmoozy and says something like, "Biffed. Can you believe this? Clearly doesn't understand English, and since you are a manager, tell her to give me a uniform." I just said that they would have to speak to HR about a uniform, walked him to the HR office and asked him to wait in the hall, went in the HR office and gave the HR manager a quick rundown, that this guy is a racist piece of and he needs to go. Went back to check on the attendant, Gave her a big hug, and it was just heartbreaking to see another person cry like that. Never saw him again, and this was a time when it was an employee's market, but HR said that I was so upset and angry, they just terminated him on the spot without any further discussion and walked him off of the property. Like, who the does or says that to another human being? Story 30. I work at a facility that breeds rodents for use in laboratory testing. The vast majority of our animals are used in medical research, so the biggest concern for us after animal welfare is biosecurity. We cannot send our customers animals that may already be infected with any kind of pathogen, because it could throw off their results. This means that the process for entering our work area, referred to as the barrier, is different than most places. To enter the barrier, you must first go into a locker room, strip completely naked, store your stuff in a locker, and then enter a shower stall at the end of the room. The shower stall is an interlock, as has a door into the locker room street side and a door on the opposite side that opens into a dressing room inside the barrier. When you open the street side shower door, the barrier side door locks, the shower automatically turns on, and a timer starts running. The barrier door will not unlock until the timer runs out and the shower turns off. Then you're able to enter the barrier side dressing room and dress in sterile scrubs provided by the company. Other than prescription eyewear and prescription hearing aids, you are not allowed to bring anything through the shower with you. No cell phones, no jewelry, nothing. Any items you might need to bring inside, like prescription medication, must be approved by management and then sent inside through a chemical decontamination port. When you first get hired, you go through 3 days of onboarding training before you enter the barrier for the first time. The shower system and what you are and aren't allowed to bring inside with you are explained in very clear terms. Also explained in very clear terms, if you are caught bringing something through the showers that isn't eyewear or hearing aids, that is an automatic termination, no warning, no write-up, no second chance. So anyway, new guy gets hired. Goes through onboarding, learns the list of things he can bring through the shower: his own body, eyewear, hearing aids, and the things he can't, literally everything else. Time for his first day in the barrier. He showers in, gets dressed, and exits the dressing room to meet the supervisor, who is going to show him around. Supervisor sees that new guy is still wearing a gold chain around his neck. New guy is instructed to turn around, shower back out, and report to the front office, where he is immediately fired. Total time inside the barrier about 5 minutes. The supervisor was the only person inside who even got a chance to see him. Story 31. She took a phone call while on the floor and continued the phone call for an hour while still working. We were kind of dumbfounded because she helped customers and kept working and would say, oh, hold on to her phone conversation to do so, but like, we can't have someone do that, so she had to go. Was a good folder of shirts though. Story 32. Archaeologist working on a longhouse site with human remains uncovered and First Nations liaisons present. New girl with no field experience somehow thought she was second in command on site and an osteology expert. Started telling everyone that if they found bones to bring them to her. Someone found raccoon bones and she started saying they were actually human fetal bones and that First Nations used to bury babies inside the walls of their longhouses. She was removed from site before lunch. Story 33. Boss hired a temp. In the first 20 minutes he emptied her candy jar, like took every single piece. He then asked to take lunch at 10 a.m. and she told him not to come back. Story 34. Did a minor safety violation 15 minutes after starting, got pointed out by the foreman. Told the foreman that nobody tells him how to do his job, so he stormed off. Management had to go at us because they were finding it hard to get new staff. Story 35. Not terribly exciting, but my only one that was one shift and done. Young guy I hired to work in a small retail setting. I trained him, everything seemed promising, and then scheduled him to work with a trusted, reliable employee. After the shift, she told me he hadn't done any actual work the entire shift. He went to his car in the parking lot and in full view of the other employee, thoroughly cleaned it out. Then he came back into the store and took a nap. When I spoke to him about it, he didn't have an explanation. So that was that. Another one that I witnessed, but she lasted a month. Call center. Nothing interesting or titillating about our job at all. One day she was walked off the job by multiple bosses, in the middle of the day, and that was unusual. One of the bosses later told me it was because they happened to choose to monitor her at that moment, and she was having phone with a customer. God, I wanted more details. How in the did that even happen? But the boss wouldn't elaborate because she was already not supposed to be telling me about it. Story 36. Worked as a steward in university for the Students' Union event team. At the end of the year we had an official ball black tie and unofficial campus party in our main campus. The nightclub was underground, but the party overflowed across the whole area above. I worked both nights cash and new to leadership. Night 1. This new guy turns up for his literal first shift drunk. He was stumbling and could have been mistaken for someone suffering from a concussion with how he spoke. Sent him home and said don't come back. The next day at the black tie event he came back for his second shift. He had no idea he had been fired the night before. Needless to say, we had good fun explaining the situation to him. Story 37. I was working in a new restaurant, and it was day 1 where we were going over the menu lines and we were supposed to show up at 10 a.m. So we're all around a table and a guy walks in and the manager stands up, greets the guy, and to my horror it's my stalker's brother. Manager walks him out of the room and comes back and tells us he fired him because he was late. I was so relieved and also a little dumbfounded by how random the world can be. I was so afraid that I was going to have to work with someone who would then tell my stalker where I had already changed jobs and moved, and it was solved in an instant. The weirdest feeling to be both scared and relieved at the same time. Story 38 a little more like a week, but using a press to install a component on a circuit board, was just smashing them. When told he had to go easier so he wouldn't break them, he said that's the way I do it. Well, I guess you can go do it your way somewhere else. Story 39 the best answer I seen to this was on Reddit and I have never found it again. Basically young girl on her first shift as waitress, customers order bottle of champagne, she brings it out whilst shaking it and proceeds to do the F1 celebration shooting it over everyone whilst roaring in celebration. That was the only context she had for champagne, so she didn't know that was just for big celebrations. Story 40 in the industry I work in, there is a rumor that someone got fired before they even showed up on their first day. They were having a party with a free bar, and he apparently got so wasted he started to talk about how he wouldn't respect female leaders. I think he even managed to say to the face of a female boss who would effectively be his boss, that he would never respect her. He was told that he didn't have to show up on the first day. Story 41 we build pipelines, it's highly skilled welding. We had a guy Makita Cap grind the ever-loving out of all his finished product. Huge no-no because it can affect the integrity of the pipe and brings into question everything we produce. He was fired in his first 6 hours. Story 42 I got fired on day 2. I pointed out that the employee handbook stating that discussing wages as a fireable offense is illegal. 10 minutes later I was told I was not a good fit and escorted out. Story 43 I've been a manager for over a decade in the same company retail and I've gotten to fire some people over the years. When they're new, it's usually normal bullshit, excessive call-outs, inability to do basic work, weird drama outbursts. But I once got to fire a gal on their first day for straight-up stealing a customer's credit card and then using it to order pizza to their home address with their real name. One of my long-term employees called me a few hours after this new girl's first shift to let me know the owner of a stolen credit card came by the store to tell us the new girl took her credit card but that the owner got it back. THR customer's card was missing after she visited our store and a few hours later, order was placed to a local pizza joint, which, after the card owner explained what happened, the people at the restaurant gladly gave her the address. Apparently, she went to this girl's home, demanded the card back, and she actually gave it. The cardholder's boyfriend said she usually gets ghetto and likes to fight and was surprised she didn't whoop this new gal's. After, the customer came by the store and told us everything. We gave the customer a good gift card on the house to make up for it. Customer wasn't even really mad, just wanted us to know and to get that new hire fired. I called this new girl and called her out and she started sobbing on the phone, confessing through sobs, going on about her issues, etc. My favorite was, I thought it was a gift card. Oh what? I was all yeah, but you're not gonna work here no more. Later when I watched our security cams, she straight swiped it with no given when I turned away for a second. The weirdest part was she would still come by our store all the time after acting like we were cool AF with her L. Story 44 okay, not the first day, but we had a new hire pawn his company issued laptop on his first weekend. He came in after the weekend, said he left his laptop at home and asked for another one. He was told, that's not how it works and to go home to get the computer. Then he went out into the parking lot, broke one of his windows, and came right back in saying the laptop was stolen out of his car. Like dude, your car was parked literally directly in front of the manager's office window. He tried to get me to back up his story which A I didn't even know the guy, but also be the person you want me to lie to watched you break your own window. Story 45 I fired someone on their first day in my department was department head employee came in 30 minutes late, did not call ahead to say there was a problem etc. I asked what happened, why were they 30 minutes late, employee shrugged, sipped her travel mug of tea and said I just couldn't get out of bed this morning, fired her on the spot. Story 46 in Dallas, I saw a new bartender get fired within an hour of starting training. A group of guys paid their tab in cash, she said. These men are from Spain, they don't tip, then pocketed 5 before giving them their change. She was asked to leave and not come back. Story 47 worked at a full-service gas station and the guy pretended the customers ran over his foot multiple times. Not great freaking customers out before they make a purchase. Story 48 I was working in production at a local TV station, and a new guy told the morning show meteorologist that his wife thought about him when they had. The guy was only there like 2 hours before that happened, and he was immediately shown the door. Story 49 boss allowed worker to start desk job while his test was evaluated. Test passed but the sample temperature was room temp not body temp. Obviously used someone else's sample so he was gone before lunch. Story 50 new driver at a trucking company backed a trailer into the terminal manager's new Mercedes on his first and last day also, after delivering his last load for the day but before returning to the yard, a trainee stopped at a truck stop, came out with a case of beer, and tried to get back into the truck with said beer. It's a violation of federal regulations to have alcohol in a commercial vehicle unless it is the cargo being transported as part of a manifested shipment, so the trainer reported it to management and he was fired on the spot. Story 51 he didn't get fired his first day but it was his first week. He brought a turtle to work and hid it in a filing cabinet. While he was at lunch we kept hearing a scratching noise and finally found it. He got let go that afternoon. Story 52 we had a new tech admin start. Around noon he was headed out the back door as the police were coming in the front door. Turns out he didn't have custody of his kids when he took them from Texas. Termination paperwork was done and approved by 12:30. Story 53 working construction, and the new guy had to cut some pieces of metal on the chop saw. I instructed him on how to do it and lent him a tape measure as he had no tools. watch him do the first few, then went about my work as he had about 150 pieces to cut. I come back, and he is using pieces he had already cut to measure where he needed to cut the next one. I asked why he was doing that, and he told me he cut through my tape measure with a chop saw and had no way to measure anymore. My supervisor came almost exactly as he was telling me this and sent him back to our office as he was finished with him. I thought it was smart to be able to figure out a way to do it without a tape measure. I thought he deserved a second chance, but I guess he caught my super on a bad day. Story 54. Working at a fast food restaurant in my small town, and a woman comes in asking for an application. She was well known around not just our town but our whole county and a couple around it for being an addict, but me and the other managers working there at the time decided we'd give her a chance. Two of us are children of addicts and she had kids, so it tugged at a sore spot. We were absolutely not going to judge that woman based on something like that, nor did we think the other businesses were right for not hiring her because of it. She comes in for her first shift, and when she showed up, she brought us all food from her other job. She worked at another restaurant, and we're all so happy we found such a cool staff member. She's talkative and kind. You could tell she was definitely just a little off, but hey, nobody working a dead-end fast food job in a small town is ever all there, right? All is well until she goes outside to smoke, asks if the smoke breaks are just for cigarettes, and then has her son like mid-20s bring her a goodie bag so they could sit in her car and smoke, parked right in front of the camera. So we ended up catching her on camera smoking crack with her son, and the real kicker is she didn't even clock out at all. She sat out there for 20 minutes still clocked in and tried to come back and obviously geeked and didn't see a problem with that. That was a fun call to make to the store owners to explain why she was being sent home and ask not to come back.